This is episode 16 with Nicki Gross. Welcome to the Sports Business Classroom audio experience. I'm your host, Sergio Millis, and each week I'll bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover how to break in and succeed in sports and life. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and let the experience begin. This episode is brought to you by Sports Business Classroom 2020, an immersive sports business training and educational experience unlike any other, taking place July 12th through the 18th in Las Vegas during Summer League. Registration for the program opened last week, and ladies and gentlemen, you do not want to miss this. It truly is a one-of-a-kind learning opportunity for anyone interested in the business of basketball and jobs in sports in general. I mean, if you dream of one day landing a job in sports, are passionate about learning, or simply want to show the right people that you have what it takes to get a job in sports, this program is for you. Sports Business Classroom combines the best of all worlds into a single package. It's great academics, it's hands-on experience, it's immersion in the Las Vegas Summer League, and it's interaction with some of the best minds working in and around the NBA. You can check out all the details for the 2020 program at sportsbusinessclassroom.com, and if you're at all interested, make sure to apply as soon as possible, as this program will fill up. Again, the URL is www.sportsbusinessclassroom.com. Today's guest is Coach Nicki Gross, Special Assistant to the head coach for Vanderbilt University men's basketball, Jerry Stackhouse, who is an 18-year NBA vet and two-time NBA All-Star. Nicki is incredibly talented, hardworking, and is well on the path to achieving all of her dreams. She truly is a rock star. In this episode, we discuss how to put yourself in a position to be lucky, what she's learned on all of her different stops thus far, and what working for Jerry Stackhouse has taught her. As I mentioned before, Nicki is a fantastic talent who will undoubtedly get to where she wants to go. I love this conversation as Nicki truly embodies what it takes to succeed in both the business of sports and in life. Without further ado, I give you this wide-ranging conversation with Nicki Gross. Well, Nicki, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you.
Thanks, Sergio. Glad to be on here.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm so excited about this because you and I have been friends for a long, long time and haven't had a chance to catch up in a while. And this is a good opportunity. Yes,
this will be fun. I hope there's no end time because this might take a few hours.
It could definitely take a few hours. We definitely have a lot of history here. But I want to start with this. One of the memories I have, recent memories I have of you is us. I think it was Adidas Nations where we were at. And we pulled up to a Starbucks and I was just astonished at the amount of caffeine that you wanted in your coffee. I think it was called a doppio or a triple doppio. What?
I did a quad. I think I was probably on a quad at that one. It's just 4 shots of straight espresso.
And is that what you're currently doing? Is that your current consumption level?
I've cut it down to 3 for my morning. But if it's a rough day, I'd probably go back for another 2.
Okay. I love it. So want to get into your current job and all the fantastic things you've done, but let's start at the beginning here. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, what life was like as a kid, and how your interest in sports developed.
Sure. I'm originally from New Jersey, a little town called Emerson. It's about 15, 20 minutes from the George Washington Bridge right by New York City. And I have an older brother who's fairly close in age. It's less than 2 years apart. And I think that's kind of where I got competitiveness from because I hated losing to him in anything. And he was a big sports guy. He loved football and basketball specifically. So him and I were always outside playing. We had a really close relationship growing up. And I actually played growing up through elementary school and all that. I actually played on all his rec teams. So I was always hooping or playing soccer or all that with guys' teams.
With the boys. Love it.
Yeah.
Schooling them, I'm sure.
They did call me Little Gross because he was just gross, so they needed a nickname for me. I was Little Gross.
Okay.
So, but they did not pick me last ever. I was always picked middle of the pack when we were picking teams, so that was kind of cool.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. Now, so what teams did you grow up loving? And like you obviously had a love for playing sports, but were you always a basketball fan, or how did that develop?
I was the biggest Chicago Bulls fan. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen days. They were just so dominant. Michael was the GOAT, is the GOAT. So that was always the Bulls was my team. My brother was actually he took after my dad. They were originally Baltimore Bolts, so Washington Wizards fans. But I stuck with the Bulls when I was young, probably under 10, and then I started jumping around teams because I started following players more so than teams. Always had a little love for the New Jersey Nets before they went to Brooklyn, just because that was our local team. We can go pop in on some games. But basketball was definitely, I was a Bulls fan growing up.
And when you went to college, you went to Seton Hall, right? Did you know that you wanted to work in sports and be involved in sports? Tell us a little bit about how all that went down.
Yeah, I always wanted to work in sports. I love sports. I actually played soccer in college, weirdly enough, even though I'm working basketball now. I always loved sports. I went to every basketball game, every baseball game. I would go to track meets. I was a big supporter of everything Seton Hall did athletically. And I was also a bio major. So I was on track to become a doctor until I got a little burnt out. But I actually wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon because I wanted to help athletes.
Wow.
So that was going to be my way of staying in sports. But by junior year, I kind of was a little burnt out of science, but I realized how much I wanted to stay in the sports industry itself. So when I was still playing, I was kind of talking with the men's basketball staff at the time. And once I finished my senior year, I was trying to get on as a manager, but they were already in season by the time our season ended. So it was hard to go right into it from there. So I stayed as a little bit of a fan, but I ended up getting to work in grad school at Monmouth under King Rice the next year.
When did you decide that you played soccer, right? You obviously loved the game of basketball growing up, but did you decide at one point, you know what, I'm going to go out and be a student manager for the basketball team rather than get involved in a different sport?
No, I always had such a love of basketball. It's a funny story how I say my career ended in basketball is I was about to the tryouts for our high school team was the next day, and I know I was probably the most athletic one there. I was definitely going to be on the freshman team. I was aiming for something higher. And the day before tryouts happened, we had the gym class mile, and without warming up or anything, I ran like a 6:02 or something.
Wow.
And my gym teacher was the basketball coach, and she was just like, "Man, you're gonna have such success. I think you should be on our track team." And I was like, "All right, I'll do track team. I like running." So that's actually how my basketball career ended. But basketball was always, I didn't have my eyes set on being a student manager. I just loved it so much, and that's where I wanted to coach. That's kind of where I saw having a connection with the sport. But I mean, I used to spend back then the Big East. I don't know if it's still like that because I played there before the Big East broke up. Back when the original Big East was there, Louisville, UConn, Georgetown, Syracuse, all those schools were still there, and we all our spring breaks aligned at the same time. So that's when the Big East tournament was, and it was in Madison Square Garden. So for me, it's actually closer to my house than Seton Hall was. So I actually would buy the little pass that it was every game. So I spent, even from the lowest seed games all the way through the finals, I had a ticket to every game, and I would spend the early stages is 4 games a day. And I would literally sit in Madison Square Garden for 4 games. That's how I spent my spring. Everyone else going to Cabo and Turks and Caicos. I was hanging in Madison Square Garden watching every Big East game. I mean, there were some great ones too, like the 6 overtime, Syracuse game. I mean, there were some epic battles, Big East back then.
And what year were you at Monmouth?
I was at Monmouth from 2011 to 2013.
Gotcha. Okay.
I actually ran track my first year, though. I used that little 5th year of eligibility no one really knows about.
Yeah.
That you can do 4 in one sport, and you have a 5th year to use in another sport. So I actually ran cross country and track my first year there, and then became a grad assistant my second year.
And so what's that like for people who are listening, who don't know what being a grad assistant's like? Can you break that down a little bit?
Sure. It's mine's actually a funny story with it. I had just because usually grad assistants had been managers at other places, and grad assistants are kind of over the student managers. But since I was never a student manager, I was just trying to help out. And after the first 2 days, the coaching staff saw how I was working. They're like, "Yeah, you're in charge of all the managers." And they had been there a year, and I was just like 2 days in, and I'm kind of in charge of all of that. But basically, as a grad assistant, you handle everything ground level of a program. I still say to this day, managers are what makes college programs run. They help in every part of a program, whether it's they help with recruiting, not doing the recruiting, but doing the little legwork of putting together call sheets and schedules and helping with graphics for printouts and having schedules for mailouts and writing out the addresses and helping keep assistant coaches who are doing the recruiting on task and aiding in their efforts. You help with video in terms of scouting opponents, post-game film, little edits you need to do for players. You're helping put those together so the assistants can walk through it with the players. You're helping with practice planning. You're getting the court set up. You're getting film set up. You're doing literally your post-game meals, making sure that if it's pizza that day, making sure everyone's pizza is ordered and paid for, and right when the game ends, it's on each of their seats on the bus type thing. It's just the little stuff that people don't notice that what make it run, that it's noticeable when things don't go right.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's running smooth. And that's kind of what being a grad assistant's like.
Do you have any advice for people who, want to try and get in the mix as far as how to get a grad assistant job? Like what skills would you recommend that people try to develop to put themselves in position to be a I don't want to say successful grad assistant, but somebody who is likely to even get that job?
Just the new one, I would say Photoshop. Not nowadays. I didn't even know Photoshop back then, but Photoshop is a big with graphics and mail outs and different things. That's a big, and social media. That's a big tool to have nowadays. But little things, just like attention to detail. So that's such an underrated skill.
It is.
But having an attention to detail, being on time, like those little things are noticeable because it helps you get the job done better. Being a GA or a manager, you don't want to be, you're seen and not heard. You don't want to overstep your boundaries. You doing your work at its best is what's noticed by coaches.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you be a great and helps you in the future, because you just put your head down and do the work. We had a joke that, I just never left the office. And so I was always there to help when an assistant needed something. They would joke, one of the assistants was like, "Man, I always got in at 7. And I'm thinking I'm there early and Nikki's already there working. And then I found out she already ran 4 miles that morning." And I was like, that was just like my mentality is I'm going to get my workout in. I'm going to be there until I have to go to class at nighttime for whatever they needed help with. It was never about me trying to, I wasn't even doing it to per se have them get me a job. I was just trying to be great at that job and learn as much as I can at the same time.
Sure. Now,
what I didn't know is that King, Coach Rice, the head coach there, he was obviously played at North Carolina, and I didn't even know this when I was just trying to do great for his program and help out as much as I could. And I guess Dean Smith always had a thing where he would help anyone that played for him, a manager that worked for him, anyone that was involved with his programs. He always helped get a job afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't my intention of working for King. I just wanted to do a great job, but. So when I finished, he's like, "Man, I gotta help you find something," and that's where it kind of sprouted, because he's like, "You gave so much to us, I gotta help you find something back."
Sure.
So he wasn't even just like, "Can I use you as a reference?" He was helping me get internships and calling people to help me set me up for the future.
And so, where did you end up as a result of that?
So right after that, I was actually on the highway to go. I was driving down to Philly just to go. Someone had set up an interview with me for someone in more of the business side of the 76ers, just to talk with them. It was another female in the industry. She was pretty high up on the business side, been there about 20 years. So I was driving down the highway and Coach Rice calls me up and he says, Nick, I need you to send your resume right now to someone. So I pull over on the highway, I hotspot my computer. And what I didn't know is one of his roommates that he lived with, one of his closest friends after he graduated college, was the GM of the Portland Trailblazers.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, send your resume over. He's going to try to help you get an internship with the NBA Summer League. I was like, awesome. And I sent it. And the next thing I know, I was just through their connection and how much King spoke highly of me, they were able to help me get an internship with the NBA Summer League.
I had absolutely no idea that that's how that all went down.
Exactly. That's how that went down.
I love it.
It was on the highway. It was on the NJ Turnpike.
I love it. I love it. Now, before we get into NBA Summer League and, your experiences there, who hires the grad managers? Who's the one that makes the decisions?
So a lot of times it's the director of basketball operations.
Okay.
You got to say if you have a connection or something with obviously a head coach or any of the assistants, but a lot of the ones that's basically the one usually in charge of the grad managers and the grad assistants and all the student managers is the director of operations.
Gotcha.
Director of basketball operations. So he's the one that director of basketball operations is handling all things internal, not on the court.
Right. Okay. And just, if you could speak to, at least from what I've heard, these jobs, they get posted online. They generally do not go to anybody who just applies for them. It's usually a relationship thing. Is that accurate?
A lot of it's relationship. A lot of it's just being persistent and reaching out.
Yeah.
For instance, I didn't know anyone at Monmouth on the basketball. When I was running track, I was just going to the games to watch all their games, but they wouldn't know me from kid next to me if I walked in the office. I was persistent. I had actually I had emailed the head coach and the Dobo just so both of them saw my name in case the head coach actually saw. A lot of times the head coach might not see those emails. So I would definitely go with the director of operations. But it's a persistence thing. Even if you don't know anyone, you can send your things into the director of ops, be like, this is what I'm looking for. I'm willing to help out your program. I would love to be a grad assistant and learn from your coaching staff and aid in. It's just a persistence. You might not know anyone. For instance, now I'm at Vanderbilt. Some of our GAs were based on relationships, but it's all relationships and references. But they were also persistent in emailing us and saying how much they wanted to work here and learn here.
Sure. It's about putting yourself in the right position, right? Being the right person at the right time and knowing the right people, combination of the three.
Exactly.
And so that was the case for you. And you ended up working the NBA Summer League. What year was that? What was your first Summer League year?
That was 2013.
2013. Okay. And, for everybody listening, Nicki quickly became, as I'm sure you can tell from what she said already, our favorite person. Talk a little bit about your experience with the Summer League, some of the people you were involved with, some of the things that you were doing and some of the things that you learned.
Just so you know, I know this is a podcast, but I'm blushing over here now. So you got me, hey, got me all red in my cheeks.
Hey, we love you.
I love you guys too. No, the NBA internship, that was a different experience in terms of people, that was, man, to go, I'm reminiscing now in my head. People nowadays even ask me like, hey, how do I become an intern for the summer league? Because it sounds like you're going to be working with Adam Silver.
Right.
And people see the name of it like, oh, I'm working for the NBA Summer League, but they don't realize the deep down work that goes into it as an intern. That's why I tell people, I said, you got to be willing to not make a scene or be flustered, get down on yourself when you might be selling programs for 4 hours and then sitting at an elevator for 4 hours because that's your job.
Yep.
And I think that's the greatest part about working for Summer League was that it shows you how much every little piece creates that whole event. Just seeing how much, I think when I started, I think we only had like 40 interns. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was a smaller group back then.
Oh yeah, no, we've
and
doubled that
now
at
we're
this
in the
point.
I think we might be more. But it was like you're working these long hours. You're not doing the most glamorous jobs, but you're seeing how every little piece of needs to go right for the whole to be what it is and the product to be what it is.
Yeah.
I was joking my first year. I, I don't know. I know you don't do the schedule. I got stuck on program duty for like 8 hours straight,
Mm-hmm.
even though all our duties are like usually rotate. And I was like, man, I'm going to be the best program seller there is. I got a high pitched voice. I was yelling programs. I was yelling it because I was like, I'm going to outsell all the other program stations just because it's my job.
Yep.
And just the relationships you build doing that, though, one with the other interns, that becomes a family. It's a little Vegas Summer League family. But it gets noticed when an intern does their job well and isn't looking for the glamorous one or trying to get the attention or trying to more so find a job while they're there.
Right.
You know, I think doing your job well, whether it's selling programs or being a stat runner, that's what gets noticed rather than like, hey, let me walk up to this GM and try to get them my resume. That's
absolutely
there's ways to go about it. And I think that gets noticed in terms of like who's actually here to work and who's here for their own self promotion.
Yeah. No, I think, you know, you mentioned programs, you mentioned the elevator, right? And it's funny because I got my career in sports started selling programs, right? And, you know, similar to you, I thought, you know what, I'm really not that guy, but let's put on the salesman hat. Let's see what we can do and let's have some fun with this. And you know what? A lot of people took notice just based on the effort that I was trying to put forth, right? And so, and you know what? Selling programs gives you the opportunity to be loud, right? And how, you know, it's like, look at how hard I'm trying here to move programs, right? So in an arena where you're otherwise as an intern, you know, supposed to kind of fall in line. You know, and on the other hand, you know, you talked about the elevator, right? At NBA Summer League, you know, being the elevator person, if positioned properly,
best job in the world.
Best job in the world, right? All the VIPs are using the elevator. And so my point is, and what I think you're trying to get at is, you know, you're going to have jobs, depending on where you're at, you're going to have jobs where the things you have to do are not that glamorous, right? It's just a part of life. It's how you do those jobs that really separate you. It really is, you know, and one of the things that Warren Legary talks about, one of the co-founders of the NBA Summer League talks about all the time, is that he picks up more trash than anybody there, right? And he says, your ego is not your amigo. And that, you know, that's kind of the essence of what it is to be an effective intern. And honestly, I think an effective person in all of life, right? And I think that's kind of, you know, just being humble and being willing to do whatever it is that is put in front of you to the best of your ability. If you do that, you will always be in good shape because you will always get noticed.
You know what? Speaking of trash pickup, that's actually how I got my first job. I don't know if you know that story either.
I don't.
Yeah, picking up trash at the Summer League.
Okay, so tell the story.
I'll give this story on this one. Do you remember Natalie Nakai? This was back when DVDs were being given out. Of course. Sold. And the program stand was next to the DVD stand. It was in the same little concourse. And another intern at the time was Natalie Nakase, who was with the Clippers. She was an intern in their video department. So she was an intern as a video coordinator, though. So she was working on the basketball side. And like you said, like I could have been like a disgruntled, you know, I literally just graduated from grad school with my MBA and I'm selling programs and working in out. But I was like, no, I'm going to be really good at this. This isn't, obviously I'm not going to be a program seller for my life, but this is part of the job at hand. So I was like, I'm going to make the most of it. So when there was some downtime, she would walk over and I would just start picking her brain about hoops. Mm-hmm. You know, what's it like working for the Clippers? What's it like working for these different guys? What's your daily routine like? We would start talking even just in different situations at lunch about like, you know, different basketball situations. If you're down 5, what's your favorite, or you're down 3 with 5 seconds left, what's your favorite play you're going to draw up? Just like, we're just talking hoops. And she saw how much what I was doing literally at the program stand of like, I wasn't being an intern trying to get phone numbers and send out my resume. I was just trying to do my job. And so her and I one day were picking up trash around the arena, and she saw the head coach of the Clippers G League team at the time was in Bakersfield. And she's like, Nick, come over here. I got someone I want you to meet. I was like, all right. But I literally have like a someone's bag of popcorn, like a Coke and half a hot dog in my hand. And we bump into him, and she's like, Coach Voigt, this is Nicki. She just finished grad school as a grad assistant. She knows video. If you're looking for a video coordinator, I think she'd be great. And to this day, I'm thankful. Like, Natalie and I are really close friends. I'm thankful she did that, because she didn't know how I per se worked in grad school. She'd never worked with me in basketball. She just saw how I went about my business and how I was serious about working in it just by the questions I asked her and always trying to learn. So she put her name out on the line just by being my reference. And we had met like maybe 5 days ago. And so I'm trying to shake his hand. I got all this like trash in my arms. It was like almost awkward, because I was like, I felt bad, but I was picking up all the trash. And that's kind of how I got him. He was like, man, send me your resume when you get back to your hotel. I sent him my resume right away. Next day, he's like, send me some of your video work. So I sent him a scout I had done. I sent him some edits I had put together for the guys at our at Monmouth. And what I didn't know, and then it was like, okay, thanks. And then there was like no kind of communication. What I didn't know is that he liked what I had sent, and just being a reference from Natalie, that they were highly considering me for their video coordinator job. And he had told all the other coaches on that G League team, like, there's a girl, Nicki Gross, she's working as an intern. She's probably going to be our video coordinator next year. And I didn't know that. So as I'm working elevator duty, I have some of these coaches coming up. And back then, like, the G Leagues didn't have like websites, so you didn't know who those assistant coaches were. So they're all walking up to me being like, oh, you're Nicki Gross. And I'm like, yeah, nice to meet you. I had no idea who they were, or that it was coming from that head coach. And they joked about it like a couple months into the season once I got the job and we were in Bakersfield. I guess I was doing game ops one day, and I was the person on the timeouts throwing the different T-shirts and things into the stands and trying to get the crowd pumped up. And they were all sitting at the game, and they were like, hey, you see that girl right there? Like, that's our next video coordinator. And that's how they were telling each other. And they were like, huh? How? She's working game ops right now. But that was like the story. But I literally made my first meeting with my coach picking up trash.
Maybe we should just end this thing right here. That was a fantastic story. Fantastic story. And, for all of you listening, the truth of the matter is like your life and your success is really made up of like the small mundane things that you do over and over again, and just being willing to put in the work. That's been a constant theme from everybody who's been on the show. And I did not know that story. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that can. It's not as good as Warren is still the best trash picker upper. I will say that.
He is. He definitely dominates everybody, And
I tried a couple years. I thought I was really good. And I look over, he had more. I was like, man, he's good.
He's good. He is a master trash picker upper. That's for sure. So you end up with the Bakersfield Jam, right? And You're the assistant video coordinator. Did you just, and that was 1 year after working Summer League?
That was, yeah. So that's July. I got the job offer in August, and I was out there in September. Okay. So it was about a month and a half after Summer League.
And did you have any reservations as far as moving there, or what was your feeling about, moving across the country?
I had to Google Bakersfield. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. I'd never heard of it. And saw kind of the area, and I had a house set up. The housing areas through the team, so I paid my rent through them, but it wasn't. I didn't have to actually go find a place, which was nice. But yeah, I really didn't have reservations. I was excited. I was ready to get going on my first job, and I didn't care that it was across the country. My brother actually had moved out to San Francisco the 2 years before that, so he was actually only. It's like a 4-hour drive north to go visit him. So I got up there a couple times, but I had no reservations. I was ready to hit the ground running, and it was a grind. It was people don't. This was the G League before. I mean,
it was the D League
8 years ago,
right?
Yeah, it was the D League, yeah, NBA D League, and it was an independent team. It wasn't even nowadays. All these teams are associated with an NBA team, but back then it was an independent owner, and we were linked with 5 different NBA teams. So it wasn't. You were not getting. It's not glamorous. You weren't in the same funding as the NBA. You're operating on your own small budget within your own business system.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually were with the Clippers, the Suns, the Toronto Raptors, the Utah Jazz, and the Atlanta Hawks. So we had to do tryouts in all those cities except Toronto, and we had tryouts in ours. And it's not as glamorous as what the G League is now, but it was the best thing that happened in my career. You got your hands dirty in every little asset because you're smaller staffed, you're figuring out how to do things with a small staff. So
sure.
Even though I was an assistant video coordinator and most of my job was video, I helped with every on-court workout. You're helping in practice. You're doing stuff that managers do at grad school that I was, you're running the clock, you're running film, you're doing every little thing, but with professional athletes.
Did you feel like your experience being a grad assistant put you in a good place for where you ended up with the Bakersfield Jam?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When I was starting in grad school, I actually had never used a Mac. And I was a PC person. I had a Dell. And the thing is though, like all video equipment for NBA teams, except nowadays more so, is only operated on Macs. So I had to learn. So when I was in grad school, they had taught me how to use Sports Code, which is the editing system. So learning how to learn on the fly there helped, because then I go to the D League at the time, and they actually didn't even have Sports Code. The budget wasn't there. So they're like, we do our edits on iMovie, which is another Mac system. And I had never used iMovie before because we had Sports Code at grad school. So I literally had to learn on my flight out to California. I was teaching myself iMovie.
I love that.
Because I was like, I have to be great at my job. And so I stayed the whole 6-hour flight. I was messing around with iMovie and learning how to make edits on that. And so just being a grad assistant, you learn how to pick up on things. Your attention to detail has to be great. And you got to learn on the fly and make it like there's no speed bumps. You got to make it look smooth, even though it might be the rockiest way to get there. You figure it out.
Sure. Absolutely. And so how long did you spend with the Bakersfield Jam?
So I was with the Jam 1 year. It's actually, and this is the way for those that want to get into sports, this is how sports work is. We had a pretty solid year. We missed playoffs by 1 game, but we actually, all of us on staff, we had gotten promotions for the following year. So we left in the G League, you only worked, the season's only 7 months. It's not in the NBA, it's a year-round thing, but in the G League, your roster, they leave. You have a whole new roster the next year, basically. So they're not around doing workouts once the season's over. So you go home and you do summer jobs or summer workouts or whatever you can do to fill those 5 months in between. So we all had left saying, like, we had great exit interviews. We were I was probably going to be the video coordinator. Like, we were getting promotions, and the team got bought by the Phoenix Suns. So they were going to they weren't independent anymore. They sold their basketball operations to the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all got fired. So I got promoted and fired in like the same week.
Wow.
But that's how sports works. That's just, coaching changeovers, GM changeovers. Like, you might be great at your job, but when there's a change, you got to just move on.
Absolutely. Now, is that tough to deal with?
Yeah, because you're back to square one. Like, you're thinking when you get this job and you do great at it, and the feedback of your work is good, you want to keep building off that.
Sure.
But you have to respect, what the Suns wanted to bring in their head coach, and he was allowed to hire his own staff. So you just got to adjust. You go back to getting your resume tightened up and having film you can send out to show your work, and using connections you've made throughout the year. And that's the great thing about relationships, is that you can tell when you're meeting someone from opposing teams, or you can tell who's job hunting for their next job, because it's ingenuine. It's a fake relationship, but you can tell someone that's just like really trying to be great at their job and it's just being friendly in conversation. You build a relationship off that. Those are the people you want to help later on. If someone called me, you can tell who was trying to just be my friend to see if I can be a reference for them, rather than someone that wants to help me or help whatever we're doing together make it work. And so those are some relationships you build along the way. Just like the D League is like a little family, because you all know what you're going through on each team. Like, the travel's rough. Back then there were 8-hour bus rides. Nowadays there was a restriction. It can't be over 4 hours. Back then you were busing everywhere to save money.
Mm-hmm.
You might play an 8.5. I remember one time 8.5 hours up one way. We played a game. We drove 4 hours the other way, and then we had a 7.5 hour drive back in 3 days. 2 games, 3 days, and it was however many hours that is, 19 hours on a bus.
Wow.
And so there's like a camaraderie within each other of like, you understand what you're all going through. And so those are relationships that are made throughout that as well. And, one of my coworkers on that Bakersfield team is now a head coach in the G League. And he had a staff all set up, but he knew if I called with someone that I knew, he would, just based on our relationship, he would have more faith in that person to hire them. And that's just how those relationships get built. So you're building relationships as you go, but not if you don't build them based on like, how can you help me get a job later? It's very genuine. They're willing to put their name out on the line for you. So that was kind of one way afterwards. Like you're talking with people, you're sending out resumes, but you're basically back at square one, but with more experience than just being a grad assistant. Now you've shown you've done it. You've worked with pros. You've been in a G League system, you know what goes on. So that helps you for maybe get the next job in another G League team.
Absolutely. Just adding to your experience and building the portfolio.
Yep.
So you get promoted and fired within the same week. What did you do after that?
I went back to the summer league as an intern, and I was trying to almost be like the oldest intern at that point, because I was an intern for like 6 more years though. So
well, you were part of the staff. You were part of the. You were a crucial part of the staff.
I liked being an intern though. I almost told people I was an intern sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. At that point, I was part of the staff later on. But no, I was a second-year intern that year for the summer league, and with you guys, I actually worked the Adidas Nations camp that year. That was my first year working Nations with you. So those were kind of things that I was planning anyways to do, even if I was going back to my job, and I didn't let any of that affect any of my like work life affect how I was going to be an intern. For instance, I wasn't doing the resume thing again during summer league. I was doing my normal responsibilities as an intern, stat running, all program selling again, whatever was needed. That year I actually became I was the credential person that year too. I don't know if you remember it. That was the year I was on the other side.
Yeah. I do remember that actually. And also very important job.
Yeah. It was not glamorous per se, because I was sitting by myself for a lot of it, but I knew how important it was to get the right people credentialed and throughout the summer league. Another cool, I've met Floyd Mayweather on that one.
Okay.
That was yeah. I was a little nervous though, because we had to do the wristbands at the time that have like the little clasps,
mm-hmm.
and it barely fit on his wrist.
I remember that. I remember that day clearly. Actually, I do remember. I was
just gonna tell him to walk in without the credential. You were good. We knew it. We knew who you were. But
yeah.
My job was to wristband him, so I was like, do I not wristband him, or do I cut off his circulation to his wrist?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which to go. No, but that was one of my duties. So I did that. Actually, that was the first year of the awards. That was the MVP year.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Right. And from then on, I didn't want to give it away too early, but I would just call you MVP. Right.
My fault. I let into that quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hey, I'm sure. I'm sure that's sitting somewhere in an office in your office proudly, because I remember.
It actually is.
Yeah.
I'm proud of that one. I'm. Well, people don't like. I'm a very proud intern of the NBA Summer League. I'll tell everyone that's where I got my start. even, I had grad school, so that's obviously where I got grad school to learn, but that was my start, is the VSL family.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, you were MVP for a number of different reasons, but you were first and foremost reliable and hardworking, and you did whatever you were asked to do to the best of your ability. And, and let that just be a lesson to everybody, who's listening. It's just, if you just do that, you are putting yourself in such a good place, because the truth of the matter is that's not how everybody operates, right? Everybody wants to go straight to the top. Everybody wants the most prestigious, luxurious job, and they don't want to work hard. And the fact is, if you're the guy or girl who's picking up trash, who's doing what they're asked, who's getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning because that's what they believe they need to do to get everything done, you're going to separate yourself quickly. The right people are going to take notice. And, when you are looking for a new opportunity, then, people are happy to, to tell others about you and what you're capable of. So you're definitely a prime example of, a rock star intern in our group who has gotten to where they've wanted to go.
That's what people actually ask me. I don't know if you were gonna ask this later. Like, people ask me all the time, how do I break in and I get there? And I'm like, my story is a little different. Obviously, just my path it's a little off the beaten road, and it sounds like I look at it and I'm like, man, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that Coach Rice's roommate is now the GM of the Portland Trailblazers, and I'm lucky. All those everything seems luck, but the best advice I could give is that what you do and how hard you work, you put yourself in a position to be lucky.
Absolutely.
That's it more than anything. Is yeah, it's absolutely luck. I consider myself one of the luckiest people of how I've made relationships and how I got to where I am. But I didn't know that doing such an amazing job at Monmouth, it put me in a position to be lucky that King reached out to someone he knew.
Absolutely.
It's like your work puts you there. You don't just stumble upon luck a lot of times.
No. And you know what? Look, the truth of the matter is the exact things and the way things play out can be lucky, right? But hard work is undefeated, right? I mean, undefeated, right? So yes, the fact that you ended up at Summer League and that led to, being a part of a D-League team and then all that good stuff. Yes, that was luck, right? That was fate, right. Whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, you just put yourself in a position. I mean, the more you work, the luckier you get. It's that simple. It really is.
Exactly.
So following that, you worked for the Iowa Energy, right? You worked for Raptors 905. Talk a little bit about my hometown of Toronto.
Man, your hometown of Toronto is one of my favorite cities in the world.
Yep.
That city. I'm a biased person that I think New York City is the greatest city in the world, and Toronto's a very close second. It's like a mini New York, but a little cleaner.
Yep, we'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah, I would. If anyone, I would not recommend people visit in the winter. Maybe like spring and summer when it's gorgeous, because that winter gets a little brutal. But no, Toronto is an amazing city to work for. The Raptors is a great organization from top down. The players were, that was actually probably the best 2 years. I loved the Bakersfield Jam as my first one. Iowa was fun, but the 2 years with the Raptors, not just because we won a lot, that helps though, but that was some of the best years I've had coaching so far. I got to work for Coach Stackhouse. Jerry Stackhouse was named the head coach of their team my first year, and I interviewed with him. He had one position left as an assistant job, and I interviewed and ended up getting that. And that first year, we actually won the championship. We had the second best record ever in the G League, and then we were sweeping through the playoffs, and the finals is a best of 3 series, and we actually lost the first game, and we hadn't lost in quite a while leading up to that. And so it was like a little bit of a little speed bump there, but we figured it out. We had something on film to adjust, and we ended up winning the next 2 games and won it at home. The Raptors is a great organization for women to work in. They have some of their top people in their front office are women. Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster, their president and their GM respectively, are great people. I actually worked Masai's camp after the first year of the 905. He runs a camp in Africa, and he was starting up. He's been running it for a few years now, and that was going to be his first year of having a girls camp as well, high school girls camp. So he had me and Lindsay Harding, who's now an assistant with Sacramento Kings. We went to Senegal to work the women's camp for a week, which was a great experience. But working for Toronto was incredible. They work well. Our G League team was only about 20 minutes from the city of Toronto. We were in Mississauga, which is its own city in itself. Mm-hmm. And we were only about 20 minutes from the Raptors practice facility. We could pop in there whenever. We watched all their games. We had a good relationship when guys were sent down between their players and our coaching staff. So that was an incredible 2 years working for them.
I can imagine. What was going to Africa like?
Africa was cool. I had been one time before that to South Africa when the World Cup was there. I was still in college, and me and my friend were like, man, we got to go. So we found a flight, and we went to a couple games. We were there for, I think, like a week and a half. And so South Africa was cool. But that was just for fun and to watch the World Cup. This was a great experience. We worked, it was in Dakar in Senegal, and it's an amazing little city. It was fun working with the campers there. It was basically like they found like the top kids from almost all over the country, but from that area specifically. And it was great to teach them because more so like for the females as well, they might not be as technically sound, as they don't have all the resources that we might have in America. Someone was telling us there's a reason some of them aren't great shooters is they might have one ball between 10 kids. So you're not going to keep shooting the ball yourself. Sure. You're not going to get reps up. You're not going to be taught. You might be driving it more. You might be trying to get your one shot, you get up. So we were really breaking down the fundamentals, basketball wise, teaching them how to shoot. Lindsay was taking the post players and teaching them how to crab dribble and little hook shots. Just little fundamentals we can give them. It was a great camp. We were coaching teams at the end. We got into it with them. They had fun little dances we ended every day with. They were teaching us some of their dances. Okay. And then in some of the off time, we actually got to go and run some little camps, a couple hours outside of the city at these little these homes that they had for some of low income families and all that. So you got to see the countryside and just it's different how people live in areas of the world. So it was great to immerse ourselves in their culture, their type of food, and see what it's like to live in Senegal.
Yeah, I can imagine that it was a pretty incredible experience, and I know you've done some traveling outside of the country since then because of basketball. But I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with Jerry Stackhouse. Talk a little bit about what's that like, how it's developed, and the bond that you two have created.
Yeah. So like I said, Coach got the job at Toronto. He was a behind the bench assistant for them the year before, and then their head coach got the head coach of the G League team got an assistant job with, I think it was the Lakers at the time. So that job was open, and Coach had talked with Coach Dwayne Casey at the time, and they kind of decided like, yeah, Coach, Stack, go run your own team. And so he got that job. There were still assistants there, and there was one job left. And it was at the time the Raptors were working out in LA, and I was working up in San Francisco. And so it was like last minute, like, hey, where are you? I was like, oh, I'm in San Francisco. He's like, oh, I'm in LA. Come interview like tomorrow. I was like, oh, okay. So I found a ticket real quick. I was trying to find any hotel because I guess it was like homecoming. It was something at UCLA, and they were working out at UCLA. So I flew down there, found a hotel, and I interviewed. I went to their workouts that the Raptors were doing. I jumped in on the court with them, and it went well. Interview went well and all that. And then, I was trying to be persistent without hitting him too much. We kind of joke about it. There were a bunch of people, from whether it was Summer League, speaking on my behalf to him. And then all the staff I had worked for at Monmouth played with him at they overlap by a year at UNC together.
Mm-hmm.
So they were calling on my behalf, and she was like, man, this kid knows everyone. So I ended up getting that job, and I went down there in, it was either September or October of 2016. And at that point, the first year I was a behind the bench assistant for him. But one thing that was, told him when I was interviewing is like, man, Stack, she can keep you organized. Like, she can really help keep you organized. She's great with film. So I kind of became his right hand just based off of like any plays he ever wanted drawn up. I knew how to work fast draw, and I helped keep it organized. I had all our practice plans, and I kept everything of what he needed to do his job great. It was his first year as a head coach, and him running his own organization. He had been a head coach before. He started a grassroots team called Stackhouse Elite back then. So he had coached before, but it was his first time having to deal with, like he always said, like deal with everything, whether it was the medical staff, PR, your relationship with the main Raptors team. So there's a lot going on. So the more I could help keep him organized on our basketball end, the better we would be as a staff and as a team.
Mm-hmm.
So him and I developed a really good relationship from there. Kind of became his right hand with anything he needed. We won it that first year. For the second year, I was promoted to front of the bench as one of his assistants, and we kind of were always tweaking our, he prides that we are a defensive team, and we kept tweaking our defensive system to make adjustments. Each new thing we'd see a team run and how we have to handle it differently, we're like, oh, this would be something good to build out in our defensive scheme. Like, we have a Bible written down of how we handle different coverages, and when we see this action, and based off the building blocks of where he started, our defensive scheme has grown tremendously since then, and it's something we've worked on a lot together throughout the years. So that second year, we went back to the finals. We didn't win it, and he was interviewing for head coaching jobs with NBA teams after that. Didn't get any of them, and ended up working as an assistant coach for the Memphis Grizzlies. And I was actually able to get on with Memphis as well, as my title was basketball analyst. JB Bickerstaff, who's actually now the head coach of the Cavs, he was the head coach there, and they were coming up with a analytics department, but on the basketball side, not just like, for the draft and everything, but how can we use numbers to help our basketball team and our schemes and different things like that. And I'm pretty good with numbers, and we had someone else work with me that was a coder. He was a really good analytics guy, but he wanted basketball people in there as well, that we would understand the schemes and we weren't just throwing numbers at him randomly. We understood what was going on the basketball side. And it was a cool job because we actually got to work all on the court and at practice with the Memphis players as well. So it wasn't just a straight desk job of numbers. We were actually, I was helping when the team was on the road. I was helping do all the rehab workouts for guys that had to hang back and things of that nature. So that was another year Stack and I worked together. And then he, from there, got this Vanderbilt job, head coach of Vanderbilt University, and came with him there.
Which is awesome.
We've been building. This is our fourth season together.
Yeah, and I know that you're the right hand, you're the Swiss Army knife, and I just want to underscore something I was thinking about as you were saying all that. I mean, being useful and helpful to successful people, right? Like, if you can put yourself in a position to where you can prove that you will be helpful to somebody who's successful, who you want to be, you are instantly like at the very top of the list of people that those, the individuals want around.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Like that. And that's like the mindset you have going into is like, that's the thing about being an assistant. Like, yeah, you want to always move up along the ladder, but people always ask, like, do you want to be a head coach? And I'm like, of course I want to be a head coach, but I'm not even focused on that right now. Like, my job is to make his job great.
Right.
And how can he win? And how can he be the best head coach? Because I'm his assistant coach.
Yep.
Like, I got to be great at my job to make his job. How can I help him? It's not about me. It's about how can we help the players? How can I help our head coach be great at his job and whatever he's needing? And that's kind of where it spirals from there of like, you're not caught up in yourself. You're like, that's why I tell people, I'm like, man, keep your head in the trenches, keep your head down and do your work, stay in your lane until, and your lane expands once you're really, really good at staying in your lane and doing
for sure
the best job that they've given you to help them be better.
Well, and your lane expands. I like that. I'm going to use that. Okay. Rest assured, I will use that. Okay. Your lane expands, when you're, if you're around successful people and people who are doing things at a high level and you get to be around, then, hopefully you're learning something. Right. And, once you've learned stuff and acquired new skills, that's how your lane expands. So,
exactly.
And
it happened to me in grad school.
Yeah.
I was helping, like I said, I had never used the Mac. I was helping with all things around the office, whether it was like little paperwork, mail outs, all that stuff. But I was so good at doing whatever they asked that the director of ops at the time was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to teach you video and you can help me with that because I trust you enough with how well you're doing the other stuff that now I basically became like the little de facto video coordinator. They didn't have a video coordinator. The Dobo was doing all of it. So he was like, I'm going to teach you because you're so good. I can trust you to handle a lot of this video work.
Sure.
And that's how that lane expanded.
Yeah, no, hey. And I mean, lane expansion is one of my favorite things to talk about. But, the fact of the matter is like we get, at Hall Pass Media, hundreds of internship applications. Same thing for NBA Summer League, right? And the truth is here's a word of advice to anybody who's looking for an internship or a job is like, don't ask me if there are internships available. Come at me and tell me how you're going to help what we're currently doing, right? How are you going to make, my life easier or our operation better? That's what I'm interested in. And that's what everybody is interested in, right?
Absolutely.
Depending on where you're at in life, you have different, let's not call them problems, let's call them challenges, right? And think about it. You want people around who are going to help you overcome those challenges so that you can expand your lane, right? That's the way the game of life works. Right. And so, bottom line, figure out how to acquire more skills so that you can be helpful and useful to the right people. And honestly, all your dreams will come true. It's really as simple as that. It really is.
It really is.
So now that we've solved, the secret to life, let's jump in real quick to Vandy. And, obviously you're the right hand, you're the Swiss Army knife at Vandy. What's that been like?
It's cool. My title is like, I should have asked for the Swiss Army knife. That'd be cool. But my title is
you should have. You should get that tattooed on you somewhere.
So my title here is a special assistant to the head coach. Coaching college is a little different than coaching in the pros, more so because of like just NCAA rules per se. There's recruiting. That's a whole other monster in itself. But my role is kind of transformed because I'm still coach's right hand, but I can't be on court. And that's the only difference of like in the pros, anyone can be on court and anyone can rebound and anyone can pass. And I'm not allowed to do that. Only your 3 assistants can do that. And those are the same 3 that can go out recruiting. So basically, one of the biggest jobs I've had, just because I know Coach Stackhouse, I know how he works, I know how he wants his program built, is I was here to onboard everyone on his staff. They're all new working for him. So my way is to teach them the ropes, teach him his system. I would walk through, even early on, like all the drills we had, since I can't be out there coaching, I would coach our coaches on the drills. I would teach them all the drills. We would do like coaches walkthroughs. We would have our managers and everyone. We'd be out there on the court before the players even got there, learning the drills that we're going to use in practice. So those were, I was basically onboarding, and then anything that comes up along the way, a lot of the staff or assistants, they'll come to me and ask how to go about it with coach, just because I understand him. I've worked for him for a bunch of years.
Sure.
So I'm kind of like the onboarder per se of everyone else, just to make it, like I said, run smooth again for him, so that they're handling their business how he wants it done, to help our program build from here.
So for anybody who wants to break, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, but for anybody who wants to break into, let's say, college basketball, at the entry level, right? Whatever entry level gig you can get. What are the main skills that you would encourage people to develop that they can develop on their own time so that when they do apply, they look like a good candidate?
You know what? There's actually, I don't know if it's still around. I used to tell people, like, even every college team uses sports code now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted a lot of entry positions are like now assistant or just video coordinators for these teams. Sports code is the editing system that was used, and there used to be, I don't know if it's still around because they just got bought by another company. There used to be a 10-hour trial window where you can mess around with it and learn it. And
how many of those did you sign up for?
So they get your IP address. So I use like 4 different laptops.
I'm sure you did.
Just to make sure you quit, because if you leave the program running in the background, it's using up your hours.
There you go.
But I used to tell people, like, learn. I got another fun story for you on that.
Okay.
Now it's a sidetrack on it. But yeah, that year that I got promoted and fired from Bakersfield, I was applying to be. I was in the running. It came down to me and another person for the assistant video coordinator job of the Detroit Pistons. It was when Coach Stan Van Gundy had just gotten that job. And they brought me in straight from Summer League. I had applied on the side, and they flew me out straight from Summer League that year to go interview. It was a 2-day interview. And I had only used, because I was at Monmouth and the G League before that, the lowest level of sports code, which was called Game Breaker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit of a different setup. But it's basically the basics of that. Obviously, NBA teams have the highest product, which was called Elite, Sports Code Elite, and I never used it before. So I'm on the interview, and the head video coordinator is like, here's film, like, start cutting it up. Let's see what you can do. He was like, have you ever used Sports Code Elite? I was like, I haven't. He was like, these are labels and it's stuff that isn't available on Game Breaker. And so I started messing around with it and cutting up film. And, this is my first time. And I started finding out how to do some things on the fly because I had to make it good. And if I messed up, I had to figure out a way to change something. And it was to a point where I was teaching myself while doing it. And the head video coordinator even looked over to me at the time and was like, how did you do that? And I was like, oh, I just went to, edit this. He goes, I didn't even know that. I didn't know is that the video coordinator at the time, he knew the Dobo I worked for at Monmouth, and they had worked camps or something together. And so the Dobo had, he had said, like, man, you're going to love Nicki when she interviews. And I guess when I had left, just because I was teaching him some stuff that he, didn't know, he called the Dobo out and was like, man, tell me more about her. Like, I'm telling you, like, she's the real deal. I didn't know that. I didn't know they had a relationship on the side like that. But I was trying to figure out things on the fly, and it's just having an awareness for things, and like that, like I said, a key for details,
mm-hmm.
all attention to all the small details and figuring out how to make things great. So I would definitely learn sports code, or, different editing systems. Like I said, Photoshop's a big one now because social media is its own job in itself. There's directors of social media or something for these teams.
Sure.
So that's another way to get in. But I would definitely recommend being a grad assistant. I know it's, you have to go to grad school and do all that, but it doesn't, I've had people that are 30, coming back from playing overseas. They're like, man, I want to be a grad assistant. And that's the best way to learn different skills within it, and get experience in that sense. It's hard to just go from, let's say, nothing or whatever to being an entry level of the team. Like, that's how you build relationships and the underground workings. When you're looking to hire in college, you understand that GAs know everything that goes on in a program and how to go about it,
mm-hmm.
and the way that the college system lies. So that definitely looks good on resumes for sure as well.
Great advice. What are some of the things you've learned from working for Stackhouse?
I've learned a ton under working for Coach. He's he reads a lot, and I've gotten some good books, not to sidetrack, good books that I've read. We'll bounce some ideas of books off of each other. One of my favorites is the Malcolm Gladwell Outliers.
Yes, one of my favorite books.
Book for whoever wants to read that. I've given him a book. I gave him a book for Christmas one year. It was about Bill Walsh, the great NFL coach.
Mm-hmm.
The name of The Score Takes Care of Itself. So we always actually talk about different books, and he'll give me a few here and there. He has a whole stack of them. So I've actually gotten my reading up since working for him. But he's Coach is a very, very intelligent basketball mind. It's some of the greatest to learn from him because it's a very unique experience to be able to coach at the highest level and having played at the highest level. And you don't find that very often.
Right.
So watching him, him and I could talk X's and O's all day, but then when we go out on the court, there's some nuances to the game coaches, a regular coach might not get unless you actually had played in those games. He'll, different feelings you have on the court when he was like watching him teach post-up moves is different than a coach who hadn't played in the NBA teach post-up moves.
Right.
Or you might be more technical, but there's a feel he has to it of like when you feel this, and it's a different way of teaching. And so it's been incredibly fun to learn the little nuances that he's picked up throughout his playing career that he's able to teach these young players. And I think that's invaluable lessons that they learned, whether it was in the G League or here in college, of someone who's played at the highest level and what they've seen the game from a different light. He's seen it now from coaching and playing, when most of us have just seen it from coaching.
And coaching and playing at all levels at this point.
Oh, all levels.
Right.
He's done it all. At college, he was in the Final Four, and in pros, he's made it to the finals of the NBA. He's done it he did it for 18 years, which isn't common either.
Right.
He's seen all ends from being a rookie and what it's like to come into the league as a young buck, and then to be the veteran locker room guy, his last few years in Brooklyn and with the Hawks and stuff, and teaching the young rookies.
So I want to jump into books and, some of the stuff that Coach Stackhouse likes to read, but what are some of the keys to his success? Like, I mean, he's obviously had a ton of success in the past at just about every level. Have you thought about that at all, as far as like what's made him so successful, whether it be his personality, skills, whatever it might be?
I think it's a little bit of everything. He's ultra competitive.
Mm-hmm.
People probably know that from his playing days. He's ultra competitive. His attention to detail is second to none. I mean, he is very detailed in every aspect of what goes on him. And the greatest thing about working for him so far is that he trusts who works for him. So he trusts that we're going to do our job well while he's still overseeing it. He's not just letting us run loose, obviously, but he trusts, he has, I used to say this in the G League, like a lot of coaches sometimes they feel like they need to be the voice because they want their players to trust that they know what they're talking about. Coach obviously had a different, they know he knows what he's talking about. He has their ears, he has their attention. So he empowered his assistants all the time. He'd be like, I used to run all the practices with the drills. Like I would go, I had the practice plan. I had a feel of when to go to the next drill. We'd run all the drills. We'd say he gave us the platform to learn and coach, and empowered us to continue our development as coaches. And I think that's one of the greatest things working for us. He empowers his staff. He empowers his coachings to be great at their job. But he has a keen, an eye. He has his attention to detail. He watches a lot of film. Mm-hmm. Him and I grade every game together. We have a defensive grading system. We'll watch each possession 2-3 times. He watches a ton of film. He has a drive, and he's very, he's very smart. He's gone on all aspects, business, culture. He's gone to like Harvard Business School, and like after he was done playing for a little bit at a program there. So he has a thirst for knowledge.
Yeah.
And to continue always, he has a continuous growth as well.
I love that. And at some point, I'd love to hear more about Coach Stackhouse, but back to you and your success. Do you have any daily habits?
It's hard, sometimes hard to see. I work out a lot. I like working out. I like running. I like walking.
You do like walking.
I do like walking.
Do you walk every day? Well, we all walk every day. Let's back up here. We all walk every day.
we all from my car to the office. Yes, I've walked there. No, not as much as I do in the summertime.
Okay.
that's more of like, cause I'm more crunched for time because of season. I'll usually just get a run in or a quick lift or something. But I do like walking. For those that didn't know, I would wake up super early when I was an intern in Las Vegas, and I would walk up and down the strip multiple times before the workday started.
Which is incredible, which I find incredible. But you know what? I'm getting to a point in my life where I understand it, because walking has now become, or, you know, making time to walk is something that I make time for, you know, and I see the benefits. But like, what was it for you? I can imagine that it wasn't just purely a workout thing.
No, it was a way to like, it was somewhat of a workout. But I enjoy people watching, not going to lie.
Okay.
The weather was nice in the morning at Vegas because it's still a little cool. You might break a little bit of a sweat, but it's just a way to like calm your mind and get your thoughts out instead of just like sitting around and kind of being lazy and things. Like I enjoyed thinking and walking. I'd call my parents, I'd call some family because of the time difference in New Jersey. And it was just a way to think and kind of like get something accomplished before your day even starts. That's
Absolutely.
Kind of how I looked at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of the guests on the show.
And get coffee.
And get your 6 shots of espresso in, right?
But you were saying a lot of people on the show have said that?
Yeah. David Fogel, president of the Coaches Association, you know, he makes it a habit to walk in New York. I think he walks several blocks every single day and does so without his phone, just, you know, does it to unwind and think about what's happened throughout the day, and, you know, just time to think, right? Without a phone, without music, whatever it might be. It's his alone time.
And it was actually, weirdly enough, I saw a lot of coaches always walking out that early in the morning too.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, it's definitely a habit that many successful people, you know, do, is make time to, you know, walk, so that they make sure that they're just not stagnant, right? I told David, and he made a joke. I said, yeah, many of the most successful people ever were, you know, avid walkers, right? Like they would make the time to get out and, you know, just ruminate with their thoughts. And, you know, Lincoln was a big walker, Steve Jobs, and then, you know, Nicki Gross, David Fogel. So long list of super successful people, you know, but,
I don't know if my name's ever been grouped in with Steve Jobs
or Lincoln, or Lincoln,
yeah,
but Lincoln,
yeah, or
it
Lincoln,
has,
or
huh?
Lincoln.
But Lincoln it has. But so on that same kind of topic, what about books? Right, everybody who listens knows I love reading. Obviously, you said you've picked up your reading since working for Stack. What are some of your favorite books that you've read, and how much do you read?
So unfortunately my readings calmed down over the last like maybe 2 years, but definitely the first year, because Coach had mentioned a few books and I got some ideas from him. My favorite is Outliers. The Bill Walsh book I mentioned is Score Takes Care of Itself. Just because I had worked for a bunch of Carolina people, but I also had a high respect for Dean Smith. The Carolina Way was a great book, which is the thing about Dean Smith is the same with John Wooden with his books is I've read his, you know, the Coach Wooden like biographies and things.
Yeah.
They were amazing teachers. They weren't so much coaches, whether it was life lessons and that's something I've gotten from their books of how to teach.
Yep.
Which I think, and that's actually something Coach Stackhouse always sees. He doesn't see it as much as coaching as teaching, whether it's teaching the game, teaching life lessons, teaching how to handle certain aspects of things. Like that's a big word I've always heard, is that they were teachers. Blanking now. I have 2 other favorite books, and I know one of them is actually gosh, I forgot. Now I'm completely blank. I'll have to text you the name and we can throw it in later.
It's all right. We can get back to it, but
we can get back to it. I got a few other good ones.
Okay. No, hey, yeah, let's get back to it. And if you remember after the fact, everything we've talked about will be in the show notes on the site. So we can certainly add some stuff. You
Jack
got it?
Ryan. No, just side note of that. I love reading some CIA type books.
Okay. I love it.
That's my vacation books. I like to think I'm in the FBI or the CIA and can solve world problems.
Yeah. Yeah. Didn't you go? Where did you go on vacation that one year? Did you go to Hawaii?
I went to Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually like right after. So when I was interviewing for Coach Stackhouse, I had to push back. I finally was like, man, I haven't been on vacation in like 7 years. I'm gonna just go on my own.
Yeah.
I'm just to take off. And it was actually, I had to push back the vacation a few days because Coach had called me and was like, hey, come interview. And I was like, for sure. And I was like, I was going to cancel it. And then I was able to push it back. But yeah, I went to Hawaii for like 4 or 5 days on my own. I learned to surf, saw Pearl Harbor. Had never been there.
That's
Made
awesome.
friends with the locals, and it was cool. It was a nice little getaway.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And I think it's awesome that you went by yourself and had some alone time and, you know, all that stuff. That's good for your health and good for the soul. That's for sure. I have a few final questions here, but before we get to them, see if Coach Stack would be open to reading a book that I recommend.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, I mean, I'll think about it. I'm going to think about it, but I am reading a lot lately. My goal is 52 books this year. And so if he's up for a good book, just let me know a category and, you know, I'll send him one if you're up for that.
I think he's always up for a good book. I mean, he has stacks of books all throughout his office.
Cool. I'm building the library myself. So the idea is that a couple of years from now, I've got, you know, books from floor to ceiling and just my own library. But a few final questions here.
Right.
Have you ever looked at, you know, obviously you're a woman in sports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, have you ever looked at it that way? I don't see you as being somebody who kind of looks at it like you're a woman trying to make it in sports. You've obviously been super successful and just put your head down. But do you have any advice for, you know, females who are trying to get ahead in the sports industry?
I mean, kind of the advice, it is different. You know, my advice is always the same of like, you know, like I said, attention to detail, putting your head down, doing great work. And it's kind of like a funny story with that. Like people back when I was trying to get a job in the NBA, like it was like even before, you know, Becky Hammon and all that. And I didn't even realize there was a barrier there. I guess like that it's almost naive. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I want to work in the NBA. Like that's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And someone said, they're like, man, you're kind of naive. And I was like, damn, I guess I am naive. Like I didn't think there was a barrier. I'm trying to put my resume out there and see what I can do to work. You know, I had no problem working as a grad assistant on the men's team. But I have people reach out all the time. I know people that have been grad assistants for other men's teams as well. I think the G League is a great place to start. Obviously there is no G League per se for like the WNBA. But it's the same advice of putting yourself in the right position, making the right relationships, being knowledgeable. Like I watch a ton of film even when I was starting and still to this day, like I watch a ton of film to make sure, you know, people might think that not just for women or men, but people think like, you know, giving your opinion and that is being the best way to get seen. Or coming up with these ideas is the best way for a coach to see that you're doing great. But you have to be really like my thing is you have to be really confident in those ideas. You don't want to just throw something up against the wall and hope it sticks. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure before you bring it to the coach that it sticks. And the same goes for players too. And a lot of things to gain a player's trust when you're coaching them. Like if they ask you a question, I tell people all the time, it's better to say you don't know and you'll find out rather than giving an answer it might be wrong.
Sure.
Because if you give them something that might be wrong and then they do what you said and they get in trouble or they get taken out of the game from it, you've lost their trust. But right. At the same, you know, I have no problem saying like, I'm not sure, let me find out. I'm not just going to make up an answer because there's more of a respect for that because I haven't lost their trust. I haven't given them bad information. And the same goes for your head coach. You don't want to, I make sure, you know, I have no problem if we're in the middle of the game and coach says, what happened on that pick and roll? I say I didn't see it. I was watching the weak side. I'm not going to make up something of this and then we go on film because he'll trust what I say. Whereas if I say this person messed up, he's going to make that correction with that person. But I can't say this person messed up and then he makes the correction and then we go on film and see it was completely someone else's fault.
Because it's all there, right? I mean,
Right.
It's all being documented, right?
Right.
It's
Film
all
doesn't
film.
lie.
No, it does not. No, it does not.
So you have to be confident in what you're seeing and what you're saying. And to get to that point, I watch a ton of film, whether it's our games, other basketball, just different things like that. And that's something that, working for Coach Stackhouse, like the game, people have said it to him, like working for him, the game is slowed down. And I'll definitely say from when I worked 7 years ago in the G League to now, I see the game a lot slower. And that's a credit to the system and how he teaches, as well as how much film I've watched. That it's easier to see. It's just the game is slowed down tremendously, that things aren't happening super fast, that you're missing it. You're actually seeing what's going on.
How much film are you watching these days?
A lot.
Yeah, what's a lot?
So, I mean, there's always games on TV that you can go watch, and but when you have it was different in the G League. You have much more games in the G League you play 50, in the NBA you play 82, and in college you only play like 30. So you only have 2 games a week, but you can always watch scout film. Whether we play Georgia Saturday, I'm gonna watch all like their past 5 games, let's say, but leading up to it, I'm gonna watch our own game that we just played. We just played against Tennessee. I'll watch that probably 2 times afterwards, because you always see something new each time.
Mm-hmm.
Then at night you turn on TV and there's gonna be we're familiar with, but you can also watch some ACC and pick up some good sets that other coaches are running. The NBA is always gonna be on. It comes back tonight from All-Star break, which is awesome.
Yes, it does.
So there's always something you can be watching, and honestly, it's like the greatest job in the world that I'm saying, like, watching basketball is my job.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's a key to success, is watching as much basketball as possible?
Yeah, but you gotta enjoy it. Like I truly like love going home and watching like every NBA games on while watching games on my laptop. Like,
okay, you got multiple games going at one time.
Oh,
huh?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I love
Flipping
it.
back and forth on channels, but you gotta want to learn. You gotta kind of have like a thirst for knowledge of it, but you gotta enjoy it too. You don't want to. You want to. I don't want it to feel like, damn, I gotta watch this tape.
Right.
I'm like excited to watch tape.
Have you ever been at that point?
No, I
No.
haven't.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Before we go, do you have any requests for the audience?
Requests. What kind of requests? What have been
hey,
requests?
this is your show. You make any kind of requests you want.
I was having fun storytelling. I was reminiscing.
Yeah, you did awesome. This was awesome.
But no, I know I've given all the advice I can, but like I said, putting yourself in positions to be lucky is like the greatest thing that happened to me, and without knowing I was doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was program selling, all that stuff that puts you in a position, just being great at whatever task is in front of you and given to you is the best advice I can give.
And finally, where can people find you?
Where can they find me?
Online. Let's say online.
By the way, Sergio, have you been to Nashville?
I have. Not in a few years. Fantastic city.
Amazing city. It's growing too. They're creating like an Amazon headquarters down here as well.
Yeah.
They say like 80 or 100 people move here a day, but this is an amazing city for anyone. I'm a foodie, so they have all different types of restaurants here.
And I'm a music guy, so it's perfect.
You have to be good at the live music. Wherever you go is going to be great here.
It's incredible. Yeah, but where can people find you online?
I got my LinkedIn profile. It's just Nicki Gross.
Okay.
You can shoot me an email. My work email is nikki.gross@vanderbilt.edu. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter, but I rarely use those. I'm not good at this generation. I'm an old school person. I get my news from it though.
Yeah, you are an old soul, but that's that, amongst other things, is part of the reason we love you. But Nick, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I know you're incredibly busy. This has been awesome and long overdue for us to catch up. I feel good. I feel great that we had a chance to catch up, and hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. This was awesome. Thanks for having me, Sergio.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Talk soon. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed and learned a lot from my conversation with Coach Nicki Gross. You can find the show notes for everything we discussed at sportsbusinessclassroom.com/Nicki-Gross. That's NICKI-GROSS. And ladies and gentlemen, please do me a favor. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with your friends, share it with your family, and anyone you think might be able to get something out of it. And if you can, and you really got some value, please take a few minutes to review the show on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast. And as always, we want to hear from you. If you have any follow-up questions for Nicki or myself, you can leave a comment on the site or send us your questions on social media by tagging us at Sports Business Classroom or at Nicki Gross. Big thank you as always to our sponsors, Sports Business Classroom and Hall Pass Media, and thanks again for listening. We will see you here next week on the Sports Business Classroom audio experience.